Number 1. Tekashi 6ix9ine. He wasn't a musician. He was a glitch in the matrix. A living, breathing internet virus engineered for one purpose: to go viral. In 2017, the rules of fame were being rewritten, and Daniel Hernandez was holding the pen. He exploded onto the scene not as an artist but as an event. A walking, screaming cartoon character with a cascade of rainbow hair, a face covered in a spiderweb of 69 tattoos, and a voice that sounded like a permanent state of rage. His name was Tekashi 6ix9ine, and he was impossible to ignore. He understood something that an older generation of stars could never grasp. In the new digital economy, attention is the only currency that matters. And it doesn't matter if that attention comes from love or from pure, unfiltered hate. In fact, hate was better. Hate was louder. Hate got more clicks, so he built his empire on it. His music was not subtle. Songs like Gummo and Fefe were not crafted. They were unleashed. They were raw, aggressive, primal, and sonically abrasive. They were the perfect soundtrack for a generation raised on the chaos of the internet. He turned trolling into an art form. He picked fights with music legends, with entire cities, with anyone and everyone who would give him a platform. He turned his Instagram live feed into a must-see pay-per-view event where he would mock, threaten, and expose his rivals. Millions tuned in, disgusted, fascinated, but most importantly, they tuned in. He was a real-life anime villain, the anti-hero of the social media age. And with every headline, every angry comment, every view, his power grew. He was making millions. He was, in his own mind, untouchable. But the cartoon had a secret, a very dark, very real secret. The Treyway he shouted in every song wasn't just a catchy phrase. The gang signs he threw in his videos were not just for show. He wasn't just acting like a gangster for street credibility. He was, according to the federal government, a fully initiated card-carrying member of the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. This wasn't a marketing gimmick. This was real. The world watched, confused, as the line between the persona and the person blurred, then evaporated completely. Was Daniel Hernandez playing the character of Tekashi 6ix9ine? Or was Tekashi 6ix9ine just the public face for the crimes of Daniel Hernandez? The answer, as the feds would soon reveal, was far more terrifying than anyone thought. He wasn't just hanging out with the gang. He was using them. He was using one of the most violent gangs in New York City as his personal armed entourage. The online beefs were no longer just for clicks. They were becoming real-world missions. When Tekashi 6ix9ine had a problem with another rapper, his gang associates allegedly went to work. The allegations were chilling: shootings, armed robberies, vicious assaults, kidnappings. The online troll was now allegedly directing a real-life campaign of terror. He was filmed on his own phone camera, allegedly ordering a hit on a rival. He was present when bullets flew. He was allegedly involved in a chaotic shootout in broad daylight in Times Square. And the most insane part? He put all of it online. He was broadcasting his own crimes to the world, daring anyone to stop him. He believed his fame was a shield. He thought the millions of views made him bulletproof. He was the biggest, loudest, and most arrogant target on the planet. And the federal government had been watching. They had been listening. They had been building a case. And they had seen everything. In November 2018, the show came to a dead stop. The feds moved in, not with a simple arrest, but with a full-scale coordinated operation. Tekashi 6ix9ine was snatched up and charged under the RICO Act. This is not a charge for small-time criminals. This is the boss-level charge, the one they use to destroy the mafia, to dismantle entire criminal organizations. The government was not just charging a rapper. They were charging a kingpin. The indictment was a horror story: racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, assault with a deadly weapon, drug trafficking. The rainbow-haired internet clown was suddenly looking at a mandatory minimum of 47 years in federal prison. A life sentence. The game was over. The brash, arrogant king of the internet was in a cold cell, facing a future where his only audience would be prison guards. He was trapped. The street code he had glorified in his music, the code of loyalty, of silence, demanded he stay quiet. You don't talk. You don't snitch. You do the time. That's the rule. His entire image was built on being the toughest, most real gangster in the game. But this rapper had never played by the rules. Not the music industry's rules. Not the internet's rules. And as it turned out, not the street's rules either. He had one move left. The single most controversial, unthinkable move in the history of hip-hop. He cooperated. He didn't just cooperate. He became the greatest government witness the rap world had ever seen. He took the stand in open court, and with a calm, casual voice, he pointed at his former gang members. He called them out by name. He identified who was who in the gang's hierarchy. He detailed their crimes, their ranks, their operations. He read a script that dismantled the entire 9-tray organization. He broke the code. He snitched. He turned his back on the very people who had given him his terrifying power. The world watched, horrified and fascinated. He had betrayed everyone. He was a rat, the ultimate taboo. And for this extraordinary cooperation, his 47-year sentence vanished. The judge sentenced him to just 2 years, with credit for time served. He was out in months, released early due to the pandemic. He emerged from prison not as a broken man, but as a rebooted character. He was a pariah, a marked man, the most hated man in music. Surely his career was over, so what did he do? He logged back onto Instagram. His first live video back broke the all-time world record, with over 2 million people watching. He dropped a new song. It went straight to #1 on the Billboard charts. He proved that in the modern world, nothing matters. Not loyalty, not street code, not even a federal indictment. All that matters is the show. He faced down the government, betrayed a violent gang, and walked out with more money and more fame than ever. Tekashi 6ix9ine didn't just beat the game. He rewrote the rules for everyone. Number 2. Kodak Black. If Tekashi 6ix9ine was a loud, screaming cartoon, Kodak Black is the exact opposite. He is the raw, unfiltered, and often uncomfortable truth. He is not a character. He is a product. A product of the forgotten, sun-baked, and dangerous projects of Pompano Beach, Florida. His voice is not a powerful instrument. It's a painful one. It's a slurred, mumbling, and off-key sound that seems to carry the weight of generations of struggle. He sounds like he's in pain when he raps, and that's precisely why millions connect with him. When Kodak, real name Son Octave, later Bill Capri, first broke through, the world didn't know what to do with him. He was a teenager with gold teeth, a chaotic energy, and a rap style that defied all traditional rules. He was the Project Baby. His music, from No Flockin' to Tunnel Vision, was not about the fantasy of being a gangster. It was about the reality of it. The hunger, the paranoia, the trauma, the feeling of being trapped in a system designed for you to fail. He wasn't just authentic, he was authenticity. But this is the central tragic paradox of Kodak Black. His greatest strength is also his fatal flaw. The street that gave him his voice is the same street that refuses to let him go. His story is not a single explosive RICO case. It is a slow, agonizing grind. It is a revolving door, a constant, dizzying spin between the recording booth and the jail cell, between platinum plaques and prison-issued jumpsuits. Kodak's legal troubles did not start after he got famous. He was famous because of his legal troubles. His fans watched him literally grow up through a series of mugshots. His rap sheet is not a short story. It's a novel. It is a long, confusing, and relentless list of arrests that began when he was just a kid. Robbery, weapons possession, fleeing from officers, assault. But as his fame grew, the stakes got higher. The system that once saw him as a juvenile delinquent now saw him as a high-profile target. In 2016, at the peak of his initial rise, the first major case hit. He was accused of serious sexual assault in South Carolina. It was a dark, disturbing charge that hung over his career for years. While he was out on bond for that case, he was arrested again. And again. And again. The charges piled up. Probation, violations, house arrest violations, drug possession, firearm possession by a convicted felon. This is the trap. Once the system labels you a felon, the game changes. Suddenly, things that are legal for other people become prison sentences for you. Kodak was now a marked man. He was making millions, collaborating with superstars like Drake and Travis Scott on ZZ, one of the biggest songs of the year, but he was not free. He was on probation. And probation, for someone like Kodak, is a minefield. It is a set of rules designed for a person living a normal, quiet life. Kodak's life was the opposite of normal. His entire career became a high-stakes balancing act. He would be released from jail, drop a #1 album like Dying to Live, and then, just months later, a viral video would surface. It might be him in a fistfight. It might be him disrespecting a hip-hop legend. Or it might be him on his own Instagram Live, making bizarre and threatening comments. The world watched, unable to look away, as he repeatedly self-destructed. In 2019, the cycle caught up to him in a big way. He was arrested at the Rolling Loud Music Festival in Miami, just moments before he was scheduled to perform. The charge? Falsifying information on a federal application to buy a firearm. It was a serious charge, and the judge was tired of seeing him. He was sentenced to nearly 4 years in federal prison. It seemed like the end. The Project Baby was finally consumed by the system. And then the most bizarre twist in modern music history happened. In January 2021, on the last night of his presidency, Donald Trump granted Kodak Black a full pardon. He was free. His federal sentence was wiped clean. It was a miracle, a get-out-of-jail-free card from the most powerful man in the world. This was it. This was his second chance. A clean slate, the moment for him to leave the street life behind, to be the superstar he was destined to be. The world waited. What would this new, free Kodak Black do? The answer was absolutely nothing. He changed nothing. The cycle did not break. It barely even paused. Within months of his pardon, he was back in the headlines. New arrests, failed drug tests, probation violations. He was given the ultimate opportunity to escape, and instead, he ran straight back into the fire. It was baffling. It was frustrating. It was tragic. He remains a paradox. He is a multimillionaire who seems determined to live like he's still on the block. He is a chart-topping artist who cannot, or will not, stop breaking the law. Unlike Tekashi 6ix9ine, who plays a character, Kodak Black seems to be trapped inside one. He is the Project Baby for life. And his story is a chilling reminder that you can take the man out of the projects, but sometimes, no matter how much money or fame is involved, you can never, ever take the projects out of the man. Number 3, Chris Brown. He was not just a pop star. He was a phenomenon. He was the blueprint, the total package. The kid who at 16 years old did the impossible. He sang like Usher. He danced like Michael Jackson. He had the looks, the charm, and the multi-million-dollar smile. His name was Chris Brown, and he was not just the future of R&B. He was R&B. His debut single, Run It, shot straight to #1. His follow-ups, Kiss Kiss and With You, cemented his status. He was a hit-making machine. He was the industry's golden boy, their biggest investment, a clean-cut, non-threatening superstar who could sell records to everyone, from teenage girls to their parents. He was collaborating with legends, starring in movies, and selling out arenas. He was flawless. He was perfect, and then he fell in love. But this was not just any relationship. He started dating Rihanna. It was a marketer's dream. The undisputed prince of pop and the undisputed princess of pop, together. They were the industry's new power couple, the new Jay-Z and Beyoncé. They were on every red carpet, at every awards show, their futures intertwined. They were destined to rule the charts for decades. The date was February 8, 2009, Grammy night, the single biggest night in music, Both Chris and Rihanna were at the peak of their power, scheduled to perform. It was supposed to be another coronation. And then, they vanished. The world went to bed confused. They woke up in a state of absolute shock. The story that emerged was not a celebrity rumor. It was a police report. A brutal, terrifying police report. An argument in a rented Lamborghini. A punch. Then another. And another. The details were sickening, biting, choking, threats. The golden boy, the charming, smiling kid from Virginia, was a monster, but the world still wanted to see. We are a visual culture. We need proof. And then the proof leaked. The infamous photo. The TMZ mugshot of Rihanna's face. Swollen, bruised, cut, her eyes haunted. That single image did more damage than any conviction ever could. It was the end of the dream. It was the moment the mask did not just slip. It was ripped off. The image of the smiling prince was gone, replaced by the face of a violent abuser. The fallout was nuclear. He was banned from award shows. Radio stations dropped his music. His sponsorship deals evaporated overnight. He pleaded guilty to felony assault, but the world was watching the justice system. Would this millionaire superstar, this industry titan, actually go to jail? The answer was no. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation, community labor, and domestic violence counseling. He avoided a jail cell. To many, it was a sickening example of celebrity justice, a slap on the wrist for a crime that would have landed any normal person behind bars. Chris Brown had committed one of the most famous assaults of the 21st century, and he walked, but the story does not end there. Because that probation? It was a ticking time bomb. The world thought the 2009 incident was a mistake, a one-time alcohol-fueled moment of rage that he would learn from. But what if it wasn't a mistake? What if it was a preview? Chris Brown went back to making music, and he was still a genius. His talent was undeniable. But the golden boy was gone, and in his place was a man who seemed to be at war with the world. The rage that exploded in that Lamborghini did not disappear. It just found new targets. The signs were everywhere. He went on Good Morning America to promote his new album. When the host, Robin Roberts, gently asked him about the Rihanna incident, the smile vanished. The old Chris Brown returned. After the interview, he stormed back to his dressing room, screamed, and smashed a window with a chair, leaving glass shattered on the New York street below. He had to be restrained by building security. The pattern continued. He got into a now legendary nightclub brawl in New York City with Drake's entourage, allegedly over Rihanna. Bottles were thrown. People were injured, including NBA star Tony Parker, who suffered a serious eye injury. It was chaos. Later, he got into a fight with fellow R&B star Frank Ocean outside a recording studio, allegedly over a parking space. Chris Brown was no longer a pop star who had committed an assault. He was an assault risk waiting to happen. He was arrogant, angry, and defiant, and he was still on probation. In October 2013, the time bomb finally went off. In Washington, D.C., a man tried to photobomb a picture Chris was taking with 2 fans. Chris Brown and his bodyguard allegedly responded by punching the man in the face, breaking his nose. It was another assault, but this time it was different. This time he was on active probation for the Rihanna case. This was the one rule he could not break. He was arrested. His probation was revoked. The system had finally had enough. The celebrity pass was canceled. The judge who had let him walk in 2009 now had no choice. Chris Brown was ordered to jail. He served 108 days in a cell. It wasn't for the D.C. assault. It was not for the window. It was not for the nightclub fights. Officially, he was in jail because he had violated the terms of his 2009 felony assault conviction. The past had finally caught up with him. He emerged from jail a quieter man, but his legacy was set in stone. He is, to this day, one of the most polarizing figures on earth. He still sells out arenas. He still has #1 hits. But he is forever a divided figure. Half the world sees him as a generational talent, a genius dancer and singer. The other half will only ever see him as the monster in that police report, the man who was given a second chance and used it to continue a pattern of violence. 4. R. Kelly. He was not just a singer. He was a certified musical genius. This is the most important part of the story. This is the part that makes it so dark. He was the Pied Piper of R&B, a man who wrote, produced, and performed the soundtrack to an entire generation's life. He gave the world I Believe I Can Fly, an anthem of hope sung at every graduation, every sporting event, every moment of triumph. He gave the world Ignition, Remix, the song that is scientifically incapable of not starting a party. He was a legend, a titan, an icon. He was seen as a smooth, soulful, gospel-inspired artist who sang about love, passion, and romance. He was the king, and for decades, while the world sang along, he was allegedly building a dark kingdom behind the scenes, a kingdom built on power, control, and secrets. This was not a story like Chris Brown's, a single night of explosive violence that shocked the world. This was a slow-burning fire, a nightmare that lasted for 30 years. The whispers had always been there. They were part of the R. Kelly legend. People joked about them. In 1994, when he was 27, he illegally married his 15-year-old protégé, the singer Aaliyah. The marriage was quickly annulled and buried, dismissed as a mistake. Then came the lawsuits. Girl after girl, woman after woman, coming forward with stories. But they were just stories. They were settled. They were silenced. Then came the infamous videotape. The one everyone talked about, but few had seen. A grainy, horrifying recording allegedly showing Kelly with an underage girl. This was before the Me Too. This was before cancel culture. This was an era when the music industry protected its assets. And Robert Kelly was one of their biggest assets. So what did the industry do? They gave him more awards. What did the public do? They bought more records. He released Ignition. He released Step in the Name of Love. He became more famous. The whispers were drowned out by the sound of #1 hits. He seemed to be untouchable. He was literally telling the world, I'm the Pied Piper, and everyone just sang along. In 2008, the system finally had to act. The tape was too much. He was put on trial in Chicago. The world watched. This was it. The moment of accountability. And in a stunning, bizarre trial, his defense team argued that the man on the tape could be any black man with braids. They questioned the very existence of the girl on the tape. The verdict came back. Not guilty. He walked out of the courtroom a free man. He had beaten the system. He had proven, in his own mind, that he was above the law. Untouchable. The king. The trial was not a warning. It was a green light. And for the next 10 years, he allegedly continued to operate, but this time, he was even more careful. He was smarter. He built a fortress. He allegedly created a system, a machine. He wasn't just an abuser, according to federal prosecutors. He was the leader of a criminal enterprise. The allegations became darker. This wasn't just about sex. It was about control. The stories that emerged were terrifying. Young women, often aspiring singers, would be brought into his circle. He would promise them a career. He would promise them the world. And then the walls would close in. They were allegedly forced to call him daddy. They had to ask for permission to eat, to sleep, to use the bathroom. Their phones were taken. Contact with their families was cut off. He controlled what they wore, what they said, where they went. It was a cult, with him as the God King. For years, parents of these women begged the police for help. They went to the media. They screamed into the void. He has our daughters! But no one listened. He was still R. Kelly. He was still the genius. And then, in 2019, the dam broke. The documentary Surviving R. Kelly was released. It was not a rumor. It was not a whisper. It was a roar. For the first time, the survivors were not just anonymous plaintiffs in a lawsuit. They were real people. They were on camera. Their parents were on camera, crying, pleading. The world could no longer look away. The Me Too movement had changed the rules. The industry could no longer protect him. This time, it wasn't a state case. It was the federal government. And they weren't just charging him with assault. They were charging him with racketeering. The same RICO charge used for Tekashi 6ix9ine. The same charge used to take down the mob. The prosecutors in New York built a case that spanned 25 years. They argued that R. Kelly was the boss of a criminal organization that included his managers, his bodyguards, his assistants, an organization whose sole purpose was to find, groom, and supply him with victims. The trial was a house of horrors. Survivors testified one after another, detailing a system of psychological torture, coercion, and brutal violence. They described the rules. They described the punishments. They described being locked in rooms for days. They described a man who was not a soulful singer, but a cold, calculating predator who used his fame as a net and his power as a cage. His defense? That these were all just groupies. That these were disgruntled women lying for money. That this was a shakedown. The same defense he had used his entire life. This time, the jury did not buy it. In September 2021, Robert Kelly was found guilty. On all counts, the king was finally dethroned. The Pied Piper was finally caged. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, followed by another 20 years from a separate trial in Chicago. He will die in a cell. His story is not just about a single man's crimes. It is about a system, an industry, a media, and a public that was so enchanted by the music, so dazzled by the genius, that they chose to ignore the screams of the victims, even when they were happening right in front of us. Number 5. Gucci Mane, he is the architect, the founding father, the trap god. Before the sound now known as trap music dominated every chart and every playlist on Earth, there was Radric Davis, better known as Gucci Mane. He is not just a rapper, he is a living legend, an icon from East Atlanta whose influence is so deep it's impossible to measure. Almost every new rapper, from Migos to 21 Savage, owes their style, their flow, or their career to him. He is your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, but his story is not one of clean, easy success. His is a story of survival, a brutal, chaotic, and violent climb from the absolute bottom to the very top. For years, Gucci Mane was not known for his hits. He was known for his chaos. He was a man who seemed to be at war with everyone, other rappers, the police, and most of all himself. His career was a blur of studio sessions, drug-fueled parties, and violent altercations. His legal troubles are the stuff of hip-hop legend. They are not a footnote to his career. They are his early career. His rap sheet is not just long. It's terrifying. Assault, battery, weapons charges, drug charges. He was a revolving door of arrests. He would get out of jail, record 3 mixtapes in a single night, start another fight, and be right back in a cell by morning. His fans didn't just listen to his music. They waited for his next mugshot. But this was not just low-level drama. This was a matter of life and death. In 2005, at the very beginning of his rise, he was in the middle of a vicious beef with another Atlanta rapper, Jeezy. Tensions were high. The entire city was holding its breath. Then, one night, a group of men broke into the house Gucci was visiting. An altercation broke out. Shots were fired. One of the men, an associate of Jeezy, was later found dead. Gucci Mane was arrested and charged with murder. He claimed self-defense. He said they came to kill him, and he did what he had to do to survive. The case was a media sensation. It was the moment that cemented his reputation as the realest rapper in the game. He wasn't just rapping about this life. He was living it. The charges were eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence, but the message was clear. Gucci Mane was not a character. He was dangerous. For the next decade, he descended deeper into the chaos. He was battling a severe addiction, a lean habit that was poisoning his mind and his body. The man the world saw was not Radric Davis. It was a paranoid, angry, and erratic shell, fueled by codeine and fame. He started fights online. He started fights in clubs. He was unpredictable. His assault charges piled up. He was accused of pushing a woman out of his moving Hummer because she disrespected him. He was arrested for allegedly hitting a U.S. soldier over the head with a champagne bottle in a nightclub, simply because the soldier asked for a photo. He was a menace, a man spinning out of control, and the law was closing in. He was a convicted felon, which meant he was legally barred from ever touching a firearm. But he was paranoid, addicted, and surrounded by enemies, real and imagined. He needed protection. In 2013, the end finally came. Police responded to a call about a man behaving erratically. They found Gucci Mane in the middle of the street, armed with a handgun and threatening officers. It was over. He was a felon in possession of a firearm. This was not a state charge he could easily beat. This was the federal government. The judge looked at his endless rap sheet, his history of violence, his inability to stay clean, and made a decision. He wasn't just sentencing Gucci Mane. He was trying to save his life. He was sentenced to years in a maximum security federal prison. This was not the county jail. This was the big leagues. For the next 3 years, Gucci Mane vanished. No music, no tweets, no chaos. Just a number in the federal system. The rap world he had helped build moved on without him. It seemed his story was over. Another tragic tale of a brilliant artist consumed by his own demons and the streets he came from. But what happened inside that prison cell is one of the greatest transformations in music history. The man who walked out of prison in 2016 was not the man who had walked in. The bloated, paranoid, and angry trap god was gone. In his place was a different man. He was sober. He was healthy. He was muscular. He was calm. He was focused. He had kicked his crippling addiction alone in a federal cell. He had spent his time reading, writing, and planning. The transformation was so total, so absolute, that the internet exploded with a bizarre conspiracy theory that the real Gucci Mane had died in prison and the government had released a clone. That's how different he was. The clone theory was, of course, just a meme, but it was rooted in a truth. The old Gucci Mane was dead. The violent, erratic man who had assaulted fans and threatened police was gone. The man who emerged was Radrick Davis. He was a businessman, an author, a mentor. He got married. He had children. He became a pillar of the community, the very definition of a comeback. His story is the ultimate hip-hop redemption arc. He is not just famous despite his violent past. He is famous because he survived it. He had to go through the fire, lose his freedom, and face his own death to finally be reborn. He is living proof that your past does not have to be your prison. Number 6. XXXTentacion. He was not a rapper. He was a raw, exposed nerve, a primal scream. When Jose Onfroy, known to the world as XXXTentacion, first emerged from the distorted, static-filled basements of SoundCloud, the music world had no idea what hit it. This was not music you just listened to. It was music you felt. It was the sound of depression, of rage, of raw, unfiltered adolescent pain. He would go from whispering a heartbreaking acoustic melody to screaming so hard his voice would shred. All in the same song. He did not have fans. He had a cult. A generation of kids who felt lost, misunderstood, and angry looked at this kid with the bizarre half-black, half-blonde hair and saw their reflection. He was not a distant superstar in a mansion. He was one of them. He spoke their language. He felt their pain. His breakout hit, "Look at Me," was not a song. It was a sonic riot. A 2-minute blast of pure, distorted aggression that became the anthem for a new, chaotic generation. But as his fame exploded, as his music began to rack up not just millions, but billions of streams, a different story began to emerge. A story that was not about music, but about violence. A story that was far more terrifying than any of his mosh pit-inducing songs. The whispers started to follow him. Stories of extreme, unpredictable violence. But this was not the gang-related violence of Tekashi 6ix9ine or the street code violence of Gucci Mane. This was different. This was darker. This was personal. In October 2016, at the very moment his career was catching fire, he was arrested. The charges were not for a simple fight. They were horrifying. Aggravated battery of a pregnant woman, domestic battery by strangulation, false imprisonment, witness tampering. The alleged victim was his girlfriend at the time. The details in the police report painted a picture of pure, unadulterated terror. A multi-day ordeal of systematic beatings. A woman allegedly punched, kicked, and stomped. A woman who was allegedly strangled until she nearly passed out. A woman who was allegedly held captive, her phone smashed, forbidden from leaving the apartment. And according to the charges, she was pregnant. This was the central, horrifying conflict of XXXTentacion's life. How could the same person who made Sad, a song that helped millions of kids feel less alone in their depression, be the same person described in this police report? His fan base was divided. Half of them refused to believe it. They saw it as a lie, a shakedown, a conspiracy by the system to silence a powerful new voice. They saw his accuser as a liar. The other half, they just did not care. They had already embraced him as the villain. The violence was part of the package. It made him real. It made the pain in his music feel more authentic. But the law is not a fan base, and the state of Florida was not going to let this go. His life became a surreal blur of extreme fame and extreme legal trouble. He would be released from jail, only to be arrested again for violating probation. He would be on house arrest, and his album would go to #1 on the Billboard charts. He was, at one point, in a jail cell, calling his fans and supporters while his music literally took over the planet. He was a global superstar and a domestic abuser, all at the same time. The case was a ticking time bomb. The evidence was mounting. Prosecutors had reportedly recorded his phone calls from jail, calls where he seemed to be discussing the case, allegedly pressuring the victim. He was facing decades in prison. This was not something he could walk away from. The trial was set. The end of the road was coming. And then, just as he seemed to be making a change, the story took another dark turn. He knew he was losing in the court of public opinion. He suddenly shaved his head. He started charity work. He posted a video announcing the Helping Hand Challenge, pledging to donate thousands to support families in need. He hosted a charity drive in his home state of Florida. The world was confused. Was this a genuine redemption arc? Was this a man who had finally seen the error of his ways? A young kid who had made horrible mistakes and was now trying to use his massive platform for good? Or was this a cynical, calculated legal strategy? A way to look reformed in front of the judge and jury who were about to decide his fate? It was a question that would never be answered. On June 18, 2018, Yase Onfroy was leaving a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. A dark SUV blocked his car. 2 armed men jumped out. There was a brief struggle. They shot him multiple times in broad daylight. He was 20 years old. His death was not an ending. It was an explosion. It froze his story in time, forever. Because he was murdered, he never went to trial for the domestic battery charges. He was never found guilty. He was never found innocent. The case was closed. There was no justice for the alleged victim. There was no final word. And so his legacy is trapped in that ambiguity. To his millions of devoted fans, he is a martyr, a fallen legend, a tormented genius who was just beginning his redemption when he was violently stolen from them. His music continues to be streamed billions of times, but to many others, he is an unpunished monster, a violent abuser who used his music as a mask, and who was never held accountable for the horrific acts he was accused of. He is the ultimate modern tragedy, a story of immense talent and immense pain, of undeniable art and unforgivable violence, all cut short, leaving behind nothing but a raw, unhealed scar and a permanent haunting question mark. Number 7. Tory Lanez. He was the Swiss Army knife of hip-hop, the one-man band, the guy who could do everything. Need a smooth R&B love song? Tory could sing it. Need a hard, aggressive rap verse? Tory could spit it. He was a producer, a songwriter, a relentless hitmaker who had built his career from the ground up, remixing old-school classics and creating his own. For years, he was the industry's most valuable player, the go-to guy for a feature, the artist who was always on the charts, always relevant. He was a chameleon. He could blend in with any sound, any crowd. He was talented, he was charismatic, and he was above all likable. Then the world shut down. The 2020 pandemic hit, and everyone was trapped in their homes, terrified and bored. And in that moment of global crisis, Tory Lanez did not just survive. He thrived. He launched Quarantine Radio on Instagram Live. It became the single biggest party on Earth. It was a chaotic, hilarious, and completely unhinged virtual club that saved the world from boredom. He had superstars, from Drake to Justin Bieber, popping in. Millions of people tuned in every night. He had done the impossible. He had become the undisputed king of the pandemic. He was at the absolute zenith of his career. He was lovable. He was funny. He was the man of the people. He was on top of the world. And then he went to a party. The date was July 12, 2020. A pool party in the Hollywood Hills at the home of a mega celebrity. This was the inner circle, the A-list. And the two biggest stars there were Tory Lanez and the new queen of rap, Megan Thee Stallion. They were friends. They were collaborators. They were seen leaving the party together in a black luxury SUV. What happened next was not a celebrity spat. It was a nightmare. The car was pulled over by the LAPD after reports of gunfire in the area. The scene was pure chaos. Helicopters swirled overhead. Officers with guns drawn surrounded the car. Video footage showed Tory Lanez lying face down on the pavement, and it showed Megan Thee Stallion, visibly distressed, limping, leaving bloody footprints on the sidewalk. The first reports were a storm of confusion. Tory was arrested on a concealed weapons charge. He posted bail and was out in hours. But what had happened to Megan? The initial story, the one that hit the blogs, was that she had cut her foot on broken glass during the argument. It was a messy, embarrassing Hollywood night. But it was just an accident. That was the story. And for a short time, the world accepted it. But that story was a lie. A few days later, Megan Thee Stallion logged onto her own Instagram Live. She was not in a party mood. She was crying. She was angry. And she was ready to tell the truth. She looked into the camera and said, "I didn't cut my foot. I was shot. In both of my feet. I had to get surgery to get the bullets out." The internet stopped. Shot? She did not say who shot her. The world was left to guess. But the implications were terrifying. She was in a car with Tory Lanez. He was arrested for a gun. She was shot. The pieces were not hard to put together. For weeks, the internet became a toxic battlefield. The blogs, the commentators, the fans, everyone took a side. It became a referendum on believing black women. It was a mess of misogyny, victim-blaming, and wild conspiracy theories. She's lying for clout. She's a snitch. He's too short to shoot that gun. It was a cultural trial by media. And all the while, Tory Lanez stayed silent. Then, Megan had enough. She went live again, and this time, she held nothing back. "Yes, Tory Lanez shot me." The accusation was now public. The king of quarantine radio, the charming, lovable R&B singer, was being accused of shooting one of the biggest female stars in the world. So how did Tory respond? Did he apologize? Did he stay silent and let his lawyers work? No. He did something so arrogant, so brazen, it left the entire music industry speechless. He went into the studio and recorded an entire full-length album called Daystar. And on that album, for nearly an hour, he denied everything. He did not just deny it. He attacked. He attacked Megan. He called her a liar. He attacked her friends. He attacked the media. He painted himself as the victim, a small man being framed by a powerful woman. He monetized his own defense. He turned the most controversial night of his life into a product. It was a level of gaslighting so public, so profound, that it defied belief. The case was no longer just a "he said, she said." It was a legal battle. Tory Lanez was charged with felony assault with a firearm. He pleaded not guilty. He was betting his entire career and his freedom on the idea that the jury would believe his album over her story. The trial was a circus. The final showdown. Megan took the stand and in heartbreaking, tearful testimony recounted the night. She described the argument. She described getting out of the car. And she described Tory Lanez leaning out of the window shouting the infamous chilling words, "Dance, bitch," before firing the gun at her feet. The defense was desperate. They threw theories at the wall. Maybe it wasn't Tory. Maybe it was Megan's friend who shot her in a jealous rage. The internet chaos had now entered the courtroom, but the jury was not listening to the blogs. They were not listening to the Daystar album. They were looking at the evidence, the gun residue, the shell casings, the tearful 911 calls, the medical reports. The verdict came back. Guilty. Guilty of assault with a firearm. Guilty of all charges. The charming, lovable, versatile star had played the game, and he had lost. The arrogance, the denials, the gaslighting album, it all came crashing down. In August 2023, Tory Lanez was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. The king of quarantine radio was now just an inmate. His story is a brutal, modern parable of ego, violence, and what happens when the charismatic mask finally, violently, falls off. Number 8. DaBaby. In 2019, the rap game needed a new hero. And it got one. But he wasn't a hero. He was a force of nature. A 5'8" stick of pure, unadulterated charisma. He burst onto the scene with a billion-dollar smile, a rapid-fire flow, and a level of confidence so high it was practically a superpower. His name was Jonathan Kirk. The world would know him as DaBaby. He did not just get popular, he took over. The Suge music video was a work of genius. He was a branding master. He was funny, he was tough, he was energetic, and he was everywhere. He was the total package. He wasn't just a rapper. He was a character, a mascot, a new kind of superstar. He had the hits, the look, and the cosign of every major artist. He was on his way to becoming the biggest thing on the planet. But DaBaby had a secret. Not a hidden one, a very public one, a problem that was obvious from day one. He had a temper, a terrifying, uncontrollable, and violent temper. And this temper had already cost a man his life. The world was just getting to know him as the Suge superstar. But just a few months earlier, in November 2018, Jonathan Kirk was in a Walmart in Huntersville, North Carolina. An altercation broke out. A 19-year-old man, Jalen Craig, was shot and killed. The shooter was DaBaby. He did not run. He did not hide. He calmly claimed self-defense. He said the man had threatened him and his family. The story was messy. The investigation was complicated. But in the end, the murder charge was dropped. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor weapons charge, carrying a concealed weapon, and was sentenced to 12 months of probation. Let's be clear. At the exact moment his career was exploding into the stratosphere, he was on probation for an incident that left a man dead. A normal person, a normal artist, would see this as a warning, a sign to be careful, to walk away from fights, to keep their head down and enjoy their newfound millions. DaBaby did the exact opposite. He seemed to view the incident as a validation. It became his brand. He was not a fake tough guy rapper. He was the real deal. He had proven it, and he was not going to let anyone disrespect him. What followed was not a fall. It was a campaign of public chaos, a 2-year-long highlight reel of his own self-destruction. His arrogance was breathtaking. He was on top of the world with his song Rockstar becoming a global anthem. And he used that power to, quite literally, attack anyone who got in his way. The list of his public altercations is exhausting. He was in a Louis Vuitton store. An associate of another rapper, someone he had a minor online beef with, was there. DaBaby and his entourage viciously beat the man, leaving him bloody and half-naked on the floor. He was walking through a crowd to his own show. A female fan, excited, put her phone too close to his face. DaBaby, without hesitation, turned and slapped her so hard she stumbled backward. The video went viral and it was brutal. His apology? A video where he said, "I'm sorry," that there was a phone on the other side of that light. He blamed her. He was at a promotional event. A promoter was allegedly short on his payment, so DaBaby and his crew assaulted him. He was at an airport. A food stand worker allegedly recognized him and tried to take a video. DaBaby and his team allegedly assaulted him. He was in a bowling alley. His ex-girlfriend's brother, the artist Danny Lee, got into an argument with him. The security cameras captured DaBaby throwing the first punch, starting a slick, violent brawl that spilled down the bowling lanes. He was not just getting into fights. He was starting them. He was a walking liability, a 5'8" storm of aggression. And the law, the probation he was on, was always one step behind him. He was not getting hit with 10-year sentences. He was getting hit with the revolving door. He was arrested in Miami for assault. A warrant was out for him in Texas, and he was constantly in and out of court for probation violations related to the original Walmart case. He was briefly jailed for contempt of court. He was briefly jailed for weapons charges. He was a man who was making $10 million a year, but could not stay out of a 48-hour jail cell. The final proof of his persona came in 2022. An intruder allegedly hopped the fence at his North Carolina mansion. DaBaby shot him in the leg. Once again he claimed self-defense. And once again the world was reminded. This is not a character. This is not a marketing plan. He will shoot. His downfall was not a single conviction. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The moment the world turned was not even an assault. It was his infamous, hateful rant at the Rolling Loud Festival. It was the peak of his arrogance, a moment where he felt so untouchable, he could say anything. But he had punched too many people. He had disrespected too many. The industry had had enough. The brand deals vanished. The festival slots dried up. DaBaby's story is a tragedy of his own making. He had the talent, the charisma, and the hits. He had it all. But he was so consumed by a toxic, violent idea of respect that he could not stop fighting. He wasn't jailed for one big crime. He was a man who, at the peak of his fame, was constantly, willingly, and violently at war with the entire world. Number 9. NBA YoungBoy. He is the most popular rapper in the world that you've never seen. He is a ghost. A phantom who haunts the YouTube trending charts. He doesn't do major interviews. He's not at the Grammy Awards. He's not on the cover of fashion magazines. He is a digital enigma who, by the raw, undeniable power of numbers, is one of the most successful musicians on earth. He has more billion views than anyone, more charting hits than many legends, and a fan base that is not just a fan base. It is a cult. His name is Kentrell Galden, known to the world as YoungBoy Never Broke Again. And the reason he is a ghost is because he has spent almost his entire adult life either in a cage or on a leash. His story is not about one big case. It's not a single trial. It is a relentless, exhausting, and bloody war against the system, his rivals, and himself. If DaBaby's violence is explosive and impulsive, YoungBoy's is a constant, simmering, paranoid state of being. His music is not a celebration of the street life. It is a desperate, pained, and terrifying broadcast from the middle of it. His legal troubles are not a part of his career. They are his career. They started before he even had a career. He grew up in the war zone of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade to focus on rapping, but the streets had already claimed him. He was arrested for robbery and sent to a juvenile detention center. It was there, in that cell, that he began writing the lyrics that would make him a star. He got his start in a cage, he was released, and his music exploded. The rawness, the pain, the unfiltered aggression. It was the most authentic sound on the market. But with the fame came the violence. It followed him. It was him. In 2016, before he was a global name, he was arrested. The charge? Attempted first-degree murder. He was accused of being involved in a drive-by shooting. He was facing a decade in prison. He took a plea deal, pleading guilty to aggravated assault with a firearm. He was given a 10-year suspended sentence and placed on probation. This is the key. The suspended sentence. It was a legal sword hanging over his head. From that moment on, he was not a free man. He was a man on a very short leash. Any mistake, any fight, any weapon, and that 10-year sentence would come crashing down. For YoungBoy, a man whose entire life was defined by conflict, staying out of trouble was an impossible task. In 2018, he was a superstar, and he was arrested. The charges were horrifying: aggravated assault, kidnapping. The warrant alleged that he had, in a fit of rage, violently assaulted his then-girlfriend. Surveillance footage from a hotel hallway leaked, showing him allegedly body-slamming the woman and dragging her back into the room as she tried to flee. It was a brutal, terrifying glimpse behind the music. He was jailed again. He was released on bond. He was now fighting 2 serious cases. In 2019, the war came to him. He was in Miami for the Rolling Loud Festival. As his convoy left a hotel, a car pulled up, and gunfire erupted. It was a chaotic rolling gun battle in the middle of the street. YoungBoy's girlfriend was shot. A 43-year-old bystander, an innocent man on his way home from work, was killed by a stray bullet. YoungBoy, according to police, grabbed a firearm and returned fire. He was a convicted felon. He was on probation. He was not allowed to touch a gun. But this was a firefight. It was life or death. He was arrested. Not for the shooting, not for the murder. He was arrested for violating his probation. The system had him. He was sent to jail, this time for months, for the crime of being shot at. While in jail, a judge made a ruling. He was to be released, but he could not perform. He could not be in clubs. He was to be under house arrest. This is when the paradox of YoungBoy truly began. He was a prisoner in his own mansion, trapped, with an ankle monitor, watching the world he dominated pass him by. And what did he do? He recorded. He turned his house arrest into a studio. He released AI YoungBoy 2, a project born from that isolation and paranoia. It went straight to #1. He had become a new kind of superstar, a king in exile, a man who was both the most popular and the least free rapper in America. But the feds were not done. They were building a bigger case. In 2020, he was in Baton Rouge, filming a music video. Police swarmed the set, arresting him and 15 others. They found multiple firearms. YoungBoy was charged again as a felon in possession of a firearm. He was released on bond. And then the feds came for him. The U.S. government issued a federal warrant for his arrest. In March 2021, the feds in Los Angeles tried to pull him over. He did not stop. A high-speed chase ensued. He ditched the car and fled on foot. They found him, hours later, hiding in a backyard with the help of a K-9 unit. Inside his car, they found a firearm. This was it. He was now facing 2 separate federal gun possession cases. One in Louisiana, one in California. This was the charge that took down Gucci Mane. This was the charge that could end his career permanently. He beat the California case in a stunning trial victory. But the Louisiana case still looms, and so he remains in jail. He is under a strict 24/7 house arrest. He is not in Baton Rouge. He is not in L.A. He is exiled, bizarrely, to the mountains of Utah, where a judge has him under constant surveillance. He is a prisoner in a golden cage, and from that cage he is still releasing #1 albums. He is a 24-year-old man who has lived a dozen lives of violence. He is the authentic, tragic, and trapped voice of a generation that feels just as paranoid and just as caged as he is. Number 10. Blueface. He was not a rapper. He was a meme. A walking, talking internet joke that somehow became a superstar. He stumbled into fame with a voice that sounded like it was constantly breaking, and a rap flow that was so offbeat, people argued if it was genius or just terrible. His name was Jonathan Porter, but the world would know him as Blueface. His breakout hit, Thochiana, was a global phenomenon. It was not just a song, it was a dance, a challenge, a viral moment that was impossible to escape. And at the center of it was Blueface himself, a chaotic, skinny, and charismatic kid with a giant tattoo of Benjamin Franklin on his face. He was funny. He was weird. He was different. But Blueface understood something, perhaps better than anyone else on this list. He knew his music career might not last. He knew the offbeat thing was a gimmick. So from day one, he made a decision. He would be the product, not his music. His life would be the show, and that show was pure, unadulterated chaos. The moment he got his first big paycheck, he bought a mansion in Los Angeles. And he immediately turned that mansion into a 24/7, live-streamed reality show called the Blue Girls Club. It was a bizarre, exploitative, and lawless social experiment. He invited a dozen women to live in his house, tattooing his face on their bodies and forcing them to fight. Day and night, he would broadcast the chaos on his Instagram Live. Women brawling, screaming, breaking things. It was Bad Girls Club meets a frat house, with him as the smug ringmaster. He was not just a rapper, he was a content creator, and he had discovered that violence was his most popular content. The Blue Girls Club was just the beginning. The real show started when he entered into a relationship with a woman named Chrisean Rock. This was not a relationship. It was a public action movie. It was a toxic, violent, and completely codependent tornado that they, very smartly, decided to film and sell to the world. Their love story was told through a series of viral videos. But these were not cute couple moments. They were mugshots. They were bystander videos of them brawling in the middle of a busy street in Hollywood. They were clips of them punching each other in bars, in hallways, on their own reality TV show. This was not a private, domestic issue. It was their brand. They were the new toxic Sid and Nancy for the TikTok generation. And the world could not look away. Every fight was a new episode. Every arrest was a ratings boost. Blueface had successfully blurred the line between his life and his content so completely that there was no line. But the real world, the one with police and judges, was starting to take notice. He was not just acting chaotic. He was chaotic. He was arrested for felony gun possession after a video showed him, in a moment of panic, tossing a loaded gun. He was arrested for an assault in a nightclub. He was arrested, again, for a fight in Las Vegas. But the real season finale of his chaotic show was about to drop. And this time, it was not a misdemeanor. In October 2022, Blueface was outside a nightclub in Las Vegas. An altercation broke out. A man allegedly disrespected him. And according to the police, Blueface did not just punch the man. He pulled out a gun and opened fire as the man fled. The entire incident was caught on surveillance cameras. This was not a reality show. This was not a staged fight for Instagram. This was attempted murder. He was arrested in a dramatic takedown, charged with attempted murder with the use of a deadly weapon. The smiling, offbeat meme was now facing decades in prison. The game was over. The content had become too real, but in a move that defines his entire career, Blueface got lucky. The legal system, perhaps baffled by his celebrity, offered him a deal. In October 2023, he pleaded guilty to 2 lesser charges: battery and discharging a firearm. The attempted murder charge was dropped. He was sentenced to probation. He had once again escaped a real-life consequence. So, did he learn his lesson? Did he use this second chance, this gift from the legal system, to clean up his act? Of course not. That would be bad for business. He is now trapped in the same probation loop as Kodak Black, but with a difference. Kodak hates the system. Blueface uses it. He continues to get into public fights. He continues to brawl with Chrisean Rock, and every time he violates his probation and gets sent to jail for 30 days, he treats it like a vacation. He knows that when he gets out, his ratings will be higher than ever. He was literally jailed again, just recently. Why? For violating his probation. How? By getting into another public fight. Blueface is the final, perfect evolution of the 21st century outlaw. He is not a rapper who happens to be a criminal. He is a criminal who happens to be a rapper. He has turned his own self-destruction into a product. He monetizes his own arrests. He sells his violence as entertainment. He is the ultimate content king, a man who has realized that in 2024, there is no difference between fame and infamy. And as long as people are watching, he will continue to give them the show.